purposes of filling the office vacancy in the Bloomington Common Council Person District 5. My name is David Henry. I am the presiding officer and chair of the Democratic Party. We will proceed with opening the caucus. I will say again thank you and welcome to the public and media and other members of the party that are here today to observe us filling the seat in District 5. Thank you for being here. I will also remind the audience that the voting members of the caucus are those eligible precinct committee persons in District 5. So I know there's other precinct people here. It's really just the 8 here that will be casting votes as we work through our caucus today. The secretary will take the roll.
When you hear your name, please just say here. Sarah Bowerly. Here. Matt Flaherty. Here. Pat Williams. Here. Jennifer Crossley. Here. Manuel Diaz-Campos. Here. Ed Robertson. Courtney Daly. Here. Who am I forgetting? Oh my gosh, Iris Kiesling.
Is here.
Yes, I know she's here. I wrote Pat's name twice, and I was like, that's not right. Rolls call.
The quorum having been established, we will now proceed with adoption of rules for the caucus. Are there any motions from the floor at this time? The chair recognizes Ms. Bowerly for a motion to amend.
Yes, I'd like to amend Rule 10 to state thus: if any ballot results in a tie vote between the candidates receiving the highest number of votes, the caucus will go into a 10-minute recess for eligible precinct committee people to reorganize before reconvening to revote. The presiding officer may only break a tie after 3 rounds of stalemate. If in the first round the 2 fewest vote receiving candidates are tied, a runoff vote between the 2 fewest vote receiving candidates will be held, the winner of which will advance to the next round. If the runoff results in a tie, the caucus will go into a 5-minute recess before reconvening to revote. The presiding officer may only break a tie after 3 rounds of stalemate. If in the first round the 2 most vote receiving candidates are tied and the 3rd candidate receives no votes, the vote will proceed to a runoff vote between the 2 most vote receiving candidates. Cases of ties and the runoff will be handled through the private procedure outlined above.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bowerly. As that is an exhaustive amendment, do you have a copy of that we could share?
I did, and then I left them on my table at home, but I can send it to you.
Okay. I'd also note for the audience that we will not have audio on CATS TV if we're not speaking from a microphone. You may need to get up and use a microphone to read this in, but if we can find a manner by which to print off that amendment so that we can all take a look at that, that's a lot to consider in the air.
I can send it to the clerk. Can you tell me your email? Yeah, I'll write it down.
Okay. So in the interest of processing that amendment, Ms. Bowerly, would you be willing to, we haven't actually had a motion to second on it. Would you be?
Reread that once everybody has that, because I couldn't hear all of it.
Yeah, neither could I. Also, it was, I don't have it in front of me, so I can't reread it to you. But yes, Clerk Bolden.
For the purposes of people being able to hear, you might want to go over to the podium to speak. I know that it may be difficult for some people, but it may help.
Okay. Ms. Bowerly, would you be willing to rescind your motion so we can entertain other motions while we're printing off that for consideration and reintroduce it?
If I will be allowed to reintroduce.
Yes, that's fine. I just want to make sure that we move on while we're getting that printed off. Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So do you accede to rescinding the motion, or?
I will rescind the
Okay.
motion with understanding that I can
Got it. Okay, thank you for that. Are there other motions that are smaller that we can entertain at this time while we wait on that? The chair recognizes Ms. Crossley.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to strike rule number 5, public forum, which says, in order, or candidates will be called forward to make a statement no longer than 8 minutes.
Thank you, Ms. Crossley. Is there a second for striking Rule 5? A motion has been presented to, is there a second to strike Rule 5? There's a second from Ms. Daly. The motion is debatable. Are there any speakers for or against the motion? Ms. Crossley? Mr. Flaherty? Ms. Crossley?
Thank you. The reason why I think this motion is a good motion is because we have already had our candidate forum last week, and as we are 8 precinct committee persons who have all were there last week, I don't think that we need to exhaust more time to this. So hence my reason for the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Crossley. Mr. Flaherty, could you speak from the podium?
Appreciate the motion. I think I'm generally supportive of the rationale in terms of not needing the Q&A forum component. But on balance, I think I still would favor a opportunity for statements from the candidates, which are included within this rule. And so I wonder if we might consider, so I'm not sure I'd support the motion as striking the entire rule. I would support a modified version in which we only entertain candidate statements up to, say, a specific amount of minutes.
Are you making a motion to divide the question at this point?
I'm not sure. I think the question was singular, so I'm not sure it can be divided. It might need the motion might need to fail and make a different one, or if there was unanimous consent, we could, the maker of the motion could
Point of inquiry to the parliamentarian. Do we need to fail the motion before considering a separate motion on the amendment, or can we amend the amendment? One moment.
So, and can someone please remind me, the motion at present is to strike the actual rule itself?
Yeah, rule to amend, yeah, strike Rule 5, and Mr. Flaherty has suggested we could perhaps keep a subsection of Rule 5.
It would, to the chair, it would probably be my opinion that making a motion to amend the amendment probably would not be proper, because usually an amendment to an amendment would be to change something in the amendment but keep its substance, such as if you were, as an example, if you were debating a rule of changing the time limit from 8 minutes and you want to lower it to 5 minutes, that would be a proper motion. It would probably be my answer would be to that you would need to dispense with this motion first, and then based on how that vote goes, then taking another motion on amending the rules in regards to the subject matter.
Thank you for the point of inquiry, and thank you, Mr. Flaherty, for your comment. The chair will entertain motions from the floor on this amendment. To either vote for it or against. Yeah, go ahead, Ed. Ed, was that a hand? A subsequent motion about Rule 5? Yes.
Point of inquiry is Precinct Chair Crossley planning to withdraw her motion and make another?
Ms. Crossley.
Yes, that was going to be a question that I could ask, if I could withdraw and make that amendment, or withdraw the original amendment and make a new one.
I think that's an order. I'll just confirm with the parliamentarian. All right. So motioned?
Yes.
Okay. And the motion now is Ms. Crossley.
My motion would be to allow each of the 3 candidates to have no more than 3 minutes for their candidate statement.
Okay. All right, and there's a second. Any further discussion on this motion for Rule 5 to amend from 8 minutes to 3 minutes of discussion? Mr. Flaherty?
I guess point of information on the motion. My understanding of it was that we would amend Rule 5 to only have a statement portion, a maximum of 3 minutes. So just clarifying.
Ms. Crossley, is that your intent? Okay, so for the caucus, Rule 5 as amended would only include point 1, which candidates will be called forward to make a statement no longer than 3 minutes on their candidacy for the position, and the rest of the rule is stricken. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. Any points of clarification? Is there a motion to adopt the amendment? Yeah, second. Yeah, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Who seconded? Sorry.
Second was Flaherty, yeah. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. The Rule 5 is so amended. We now have Ms. Bowerly's amendment presented to us in writing. Ms. Bowerly, do you want to represent this at the podium so we can capture it for media?
My motion is to amend Rule 10 in the following way. If any ballot, so this is the rule on tie breaking. If any ballot results in a tie vote between the candidates receiving the highest number of votes, the caucus will go into a 10-minute recess for eligible precinct committee people to reorganize before reconvening to revote. The presiding officer may only break a tie after 3 rounds of stalemate. If in the first round the 2 fewest vote receiving candidates are tied, a runoff vote between the 2 fewest vote receiving candidates will be held, the winner of which will advance to the next round. If the runoff results in a tie, the caucus will go into a 5-minute recess before reconvening to revote. The presiding officer may only break a tie after 3 rounds of stalemate. If in the first round the 2 most vote receiving candidates are tied and the 3rd candidate receives no votes, the vote will proceed to a runoff vote between the 2 most vote receiving candidates. Cases of ties in the runoff will be handled by the procedure outlined above.
So moved. Is there a second for this amendment? Second from Mr. Flaherty. A point of information from the parliamentarian regarding instances where there's a limitation placed on the presiding officer's ability to break a tie. Is state code mute on that?
To that specific question, I will, when I get back to the state code. I am quoting from Indiana Code 3-13-11-8. This would be subsection A. Subsection A, I'm just going to read it in full, but the answer is in the second sentence. Subsection A states, except as provided in this chapter, the caucus shall establish the caucus rules of procedure. The second sentence reads, the chairman or an individual designated by the chairman shall break any tie vote that occurs in the caucus.
So just, can you repeat that thank you, Matt.
Yes. The second sentence that's stated in Indiana Code 3-13-11-8, subsection A states, the chairman or any individual designated by the chairman shall break any tie that occurs in the caucus.
Thank you, parliamentarian. And just for again, another point of inquiry, can Robert's Rules of Order supersede state code on matters like this?
My understanding of Robert's Rules of Order is that the rules that govern this assembly will always take precedence. In this case, state law, because it is state law, it is requirements that are placed on us by our state, its governing authority, have to be followed first, unless that particular law has been deemed unconstitutional and unenforceable by a court that has jurisdiction in the state. That would then be followed by any rules that are been established by our state party, and then any other following rules that are decided by this caucus and its voting members.
Thank you, Matt. At this time, are there speakers for or against the motion?
Point of information, is the parliamentarian saying that this amendment runs counter to the rules?
Iris had a point of personal privilege there. She couldn't hear what you said. Please use the microphone, Sarah. Thank you. It's okay.
I'm asking a point of information to the parliamentarian to understand if it is his reading of the rules that this amendment is against state code.
I will answer it this way because understanding that I'm just a parliamentarian here for the chair and I'm answering this through the chair, state law, as I've read to you, provides that the chair of this caucus shall break all ties. So it is indeed, I would say, possible for the chair to rule this amendment as being out of order. But if the chair does not determine this to be out of order and this were to pass and everyone wants to follow that, that would then be up to all those who are involved in voting in this particular caucus. I do want to just make clear that my answers, though, could not satisfy everyone. I do want to try and answer those questions, but as not being a voting member of this caucus, or really a resident of this county, I want to make sure that, I'm trying to make sure I don't cross a particular line where it would be seen by people as an outsider trying to influence your decisions that you're making here today. So just want to put that out as a disclaimer.
Thank you, Matt. Sarah?
I think the floor is yours
Yeah.
to ask for next steps.
Yeah. The chair thanks the parliamentarian for clarification and Ms. Bowerly for her point of information. It's the view of the chair that any language that would potentially harm the caucus and cause a violation of state code would result in challenges to this caucus. I would encourage the caucus members to consider the merits of the other aspects of this amendment as proposed, and possibly any amendments or motions to remove language that could put the caucus at jeopardy under code. But I'm not making a decision at this point as to whether or not it's out of order. Are there any motions or statements to be made about the motion at this time? Ms. Bowerly?
I request to remove to withdraw my proposed amendment to the rules.
Right. So withdrawn. Chair recognizes Mr. Flaherty.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to amend the rules.
Okay, Mr. Flaherty, please make your motion at the podium.
So this is an amendment to, or a motion to amend Rule 10 in two ways. First, replace the word shall in the first sentence with the word may, so that it would read, the presiding officer may cast the deciding vote. Second is to strike the final sentence, which currently reads, it is the prerogative of the presiding officer to call for additional votes as they determine appropriate prior to breaking the tie, and to replace that sentence with, the chair may only break a tie after calling at least 3 additional rounds of votes in the event of a tie.
Can you please read that again?
Yes.
That last sentence, I'm sorry.
Strike the last sentence and replace it with, the chair may only break a tie after calling for at least 3 additional rounds of votes.
The motion to change the phrase in the second line from presiding officer shall to presiding officer may, and to strike the last sentence of the rule and replace with the chair may only. Secretary, can you repeat back the?
So the sentence would then read, the chair may only break a tie after calling at least 3 additional rounds of votes. Did I get that correct, Matt?
Correct. Thank you.
Mr. Flaherty, what is the substantial difference between that language and the language previously submitted in the previous amendment?
It removes some of the things from the previous amendment, including the recesses in various rounds. I think substantively for me, well, the motion doesn't have a second, but I'm happy to.
Yeah, I'm just asking. I know I've interrupted the flow, but yeah.
No, that's okay. My opinion of this amendment is that it doesn't divest any power from the chair. It builds in additional steps prior to the chair's ultimate privilege to break a tie, should that be necessary. Changing the first shall to may actually mirrors the second sentence, which originally read about candidates tying for the lowest number of votes, that the presiding officer may break the tie or call for another round of votes. So the idea of the shall, meaning that the presiding officer must break the tie, I think is not correct, because already built into the rules is the prerogative to call for our additional votes. So if there's a right to call for additional votes, I don't think we are running foul of state code to build in a requirement to call for some additional votes before, again, ultimately deferring to the chair for the privilege of breaking a tie.
Thank you for that clarification. Is there a second on Mr. Flaherty's motion to amend these rules as amended in his? Ms. Bowerly has a second. This is debatable. Are there speakers against the motion or for the motion? Mr. Flaherty's at the podium.
Yeah, I already explained some of the rationale. I guess my basic feeling is that the best outcome is for the caucus precinct chairs to be able to decide without the need for a tie-breaking vote. And since we have 8 members, 3 candidates, there are any number of scenarios in which ties might occur in various ways. And I think it's worthwhile as a matter of process and to leave the decision with the caucus and precinct chairs themselves to at least try a few rounds in the event of a tie prior to, again, defaulting to the chair, ultimately with the privilege of breaking that tie. That's my rationale. Thank you.
Additional statements on the motion? Mr. Robertson, could you? All right, we will very slowly read the motion again. So I thank you again. I know we're a little audio challenged in here today. Secretary Pirani, can you please read the amendment or the motion as made by Mr. Flaherty on Rule 10?
So in Rule 10, the first part of the motion that Matt has asked for is to replace the word may with shall, correct? Or reverse, sorry, shall with may. In that, and then the last sentence of the last sentence of Rule 10 originally reads, "It is the prerogative of the presiding officer to call for additional votes as they determine appropriate prior to breaking a tie." Matt is asking for an amendment that would replace that sentence with the following sentence. The chair may only break a tie after calling at least 3 additional rounds of votes.
Mr. Robertson.
Was that not the same issue that was found wanting by the comments? Let me go.
Yeah, if you don't mind. Yeah, thanks, Ed.
So the question I'm having, the previous amendment, which was withdrawn, seemed to have objections exactly on the same point as that substitute sentence is. That is, it limited the opportunity of the chair to break a tie until after a certain time.
Are you raising a point of inquiry to the parliamentarian on that matter?
Yes, I think so.
Parliamentarian point of inquiry to Mr. Robertson's comment. Is this substantially the same issue in terms of the limitations on the chair imposed by the caucus?
Hearing this rule and hearing the wording of this amendment as compared to the other amendment about this, the answer would be yes in that particular grounds. But I will say this as well. While there is a shall provision, there is precedence that I think any party member would have, and also looking at a copy of the rules here about doing additional votes, is that there is precedence that the chair has given up that power to allow for there to be additional votes. I would just say this. If this amendment if Chair, if you allow this amendment to go to a vote and this passes, I would strongly consider, or would strongly say that, this would be binding on everyone. And so once this rule is in place and there's a situation which calls upon this rule, you would follow that rule. But to answer the inquiry directly, from my reading and understanding of this, in this particular topic matter, it seems to be the same.
Thank you, parliamentarian. Thank you, Mr. Robertson. Chair will entertain motions, or are there other motions or statements from the caucus at this time on this amendment? Okay, Mr. Flaherty.
The way Mr. Robertson's question was framed about objections, I just want to clarify. There was a point of inquiry. There was feedback from the parliamentarian that if there's any uncertainty about the validity of this amendment vis-a-vis state code, that's not a question that the parliamentarian was answering. That's a question that the chair can decide to say this to decide that this motion is invalid or runs afoul of state code, and
That
that's
would be out of order, but yeah, I didn't. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So just clarify. Thank you.
Yeah. Are there additional motions at this time on this amendment? Yeah.
So you are accepting this?
I'm not objecting to this amendment at this time. Seeing no other motions on the floor, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of amending Rule 10 as stated, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Sounds like the nays have it.
We do a roll call vote.
There's a call for roll call. It's not debatable. Secretary Pirani, please call the roll.
I'm just going to go right down the line. Iris? Jennifer? Manuel? Okay. Matt?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Pat? Ed?
No.
Courtney? Motion fails with 2 yeses, 5 noes, and 1 abstention.
Thank you, Secretary. Thank you, Caucus. Are there additional amendments at this time? We'll also entertain motions to adopt the rules as amended. Ed Robertson has moved to adopt the rules as amended. Is there a second from Mr. Flaherty? All those in favor of the adoption of the rules, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Rules are adopted. We will now proceed with the rules as amended. The next step in our caucus is the amended public forum. I would like to invite the 3 candidates for Bloomington Common Council District 5 to the dais to provide statements no longer than 3 minutes. Thank you. If you try to sit in alphabetical order, you'd make your chair very happy. Thank you. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Daly, Mr. Moore, and Ms. Stevens. We will just go in alphabetical order in terms of statement making. Each candidate is afforded 3 minutes for a statement to the caucus, and we'll begin with Ms. Daly. Make sure your mic's on. Thank you. If you could. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Courtney Daly. Thank you again for being here. I feel like we were just all together a week ago. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about why I am running for this office. Several years ago, when I met my husband, we were living in New York City, and he was from northern Indiana. I was from the East Coast. He wanted to get back home. I intended to stay on the East Coast. We almost didn't get married because we thought we were never going to find a place where we could both want to put down roots and be happy and raise our family. So fast forward several years, we ended up in Bloomington, Indiana. And I can very, very vividly remember the exact moment where we realized we were home. We were walking around the square downtown with our 2 young children. We were stopped at a traffic light waiting to cross the street, and we both just kind of looked around and sighed, and we said, we did it. We're home. And so that is what Bloomington symbolizes to me. It is a place where we found our safety and where we could raise our family and put down roots. And that is what I want for other young families and any other individual who is looking for that same exact thing. I want Bloomington to be that welcoming place of safety and home for everybody who wants that. Now, I know that as a community, we are faced with some very big challenges. We talk a lot about the unhoused. We talk a lot about affordable housing and sustainability. And so these are some very large challenges that we need to be facing and coming together to try to work on. And we say that we want to do that, and I believe that we all really mean that. But of course, that means making some really tough decisions in order to be able to tackle these issues. And so to have those tough decisions ahead of us, sometimes we're going to have to make some sacrifices, and we're going to have some really hard conversations and re-examine our values. Are we prepared to really adjust what we need to adjust, excuse me, to address these issues? And so part of that then is being in a position to have those conversations and understand that we're not going to make everybody happy. So we need to listen to all the stakeholders involved with empathy and be clear in our decisions and communicate with transparency so that everybody understands why the decisions are being made that they are in order to get to those more difficult places. So I want to thank everybody again for being here. I've gotten to know a lot of you over the past month and a half, and I am grateful for all the support that you've all given me. And best of luck to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Daly. Mr. Moore, you have 3 minutes. And just for clarification, Secretary Pirani is at the back of the room to give you time when let you know when time's expired.
Thank you. So I think it's important for me to, one, you understand who I am. Last Saturday, I went through who I am, Jason Moore, former fire chief, and why. I don't think that if you talk to anyone around that we're going to have a different why. We love this place. I think what I want to focus on today is the how. And that's where I think I'm different. The how is 23 years of public service, 8 years and 8 budget cycles of already knowing how the inner workings of this city operate. The how is me already having established relationships with those service providers, with the department heads, with the employees. The how is that I'm already tapped into this community, which I love. I asked my family to be here today because that is the why. When I was a department head, I looked at the decisions because they would affect my family. At that point, it was about the best fire protection service we could have. And it was about serving our community. It was about solving problems. In this role, if I'm successful, it's the same thing. It's just not about fire anymore. It's about everything. I think what I am really hoping for is the opportunity to continue to serve this community, which we love enough that we made it our home. I also think moving forward with the way this has happened is that budgets for the city start up very soon. One of the biggest reasons or one of the biggest things that this council is responsible for is the fiscal oversight. I will have almost zero learning curve on the fiscal oversight as far as reading the documents and understanding what's going on, understanding the implications of certain decisions. I also think moving forward that I've already been able to produce the results. I've already made it my life's journey to learn and to grow, to work with diversity, equity, inclusion, to work on economic development, to work on all the issues that we see. And it's not just talk to me. This has been my life. And I will actually concede the rest of my time because I really appreciate all of you being here. In fact, all the people that didn't have to be here, thank you. And more specifically, thank you to my family for being here with me.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Ms. Stevens, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody coming out today.
I appreciate everybody coming out today, and I appreciated the forum last week, which allowed us to have discussions. I encourage District 5 residents to look up the forum. It is linked on B Square by the good work of Dave Askins in documenting our dialogues. I am here today largely because I do care about this community, and I've been here since 1995. And I'm stepping up to run for the city council because I did this in the spring. And in the spring, in May, 930 residents of District 5 chose me as their candidate. And I appreciated that. I liked getting to know them, meeting them at their door, greeting and learning about their dogs. Everybody has dogs that they love. And hearing about their issues and their ideas. And I'm here because of those ideas and because of the optimism. We have a very deep, caring community. They care about the homeless. They care about the fact that their police and firefighters are understaffed and working long hours. They do want affordable housing, and they're interested in ideas and actions to advance our community for all of us. In terms of my involvement in this city, it has been long-lived. I have done Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. I volunteered in the school system since 1995. In 2010, I came out and I stepped up to organize an all-field canvass of our community because I cared about all of our students having access. And I'm talking about 10,000 public school students having access to a free and appropriate education that had the arts, had the sciences, had extracurriculars, that I wanted the development of all the students. It's what I want now as well. And I'm committed to doing this work with the council members as they exist. I'm excited about the council as it exists. We have fresh blood, we have fresh ideas, we have fresh processes coming in, and I think it's a really opportune time
for me to use what I know about this community, use my robust budgeting, financial management, planning and skills. I've looked at city budgets for years just for the fun of it. I'm eager to engage in this very important work for our city, and I'm hoping for your support. District 5, Jenny Stevens. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens, and thank you, candidates. Rule 5 as amended does not allow for questions at this point. It was statements only. I would like to thank you for your statements. Feel free to leave the dais as we move to the next phase of our caucus today. Secretary Pirani, just for my records, Rule 5 was amended to strike 2 through 8, but we did not have a motion to strike Rule 6. Is that correct? And I'll check also if, I don't know if the parliamentarian or district chair was tracking alongside that. We did not have a motion to strike District 6, or Rule 6, sorry.
That is correct.
Okay.
It was just Rule 5, numbers 2 through 8, but nothing on Rule 6.
So we'll now proceed to Rule 6, which is debate and floor statements. It is the prerogative of the caucus, if they wish to make statements during this period on the candidates. The time that is allotted in this period is 15 minutes. And again, no caucus members obligated to speak at this time, but there are any caucus members that wish to speak on behalf for or against the candidates today. Seeing none. Gonna wait. All right, we're good. Moving to Rule 7, balloting procedures. Voting must be conducted by secret ballot under Indiana Code. No substitutions or hybrid ballots will be considered under Indiana Code and advice from Indiana Election Division. Yes.
I think Rule 6 actually, as stated, calls for other speakers for, against, or neutral. I interpreted that as...
Can you point to the number or clause from Indiana?
Yeah. Rule 6, bullet 3, chair will call for speakers for, neutral, or opposed to a candidate by show of hands, recording names for debate, and then alternating among speakers for, against, or neutral on the question. I interpreted that to mean non-precinct chair attendees. I could be wrong. So point of order and information.
Thank you. I do not interpret it in that way. I interpret it in terms of the participants of the caucus. However, I'm willing to entertain a point of order or clarification on that. Parliamentarian, this might be a trickier question, but under Rule 6 and Section 3, Mr. Flaherty has pointed out Rules 3 and 4 that suggest that perhaps there could be an opportunity for others outside the caucus to speak. I'm going to interpret that as the participants of this caucus, as that has been the only participation up to this point on the floor. Can we address the point of order and information first? I would prefer not to open it to debate until let Mr. Kochivar address that question, and we can come back to your second comment or clarification. I will recognize you as soon as they speak.
Looking at the rule and all the subparts of this rule, there is part 2, which says that eligible precinct committee persons will be afforded 2 minutes to make speech or statements. And then 3, the chair will call for speakers for neutral or opposed to candidates by show of hands or recording names for debates. I'm not as familiar with this particular rule, but looking at the rule itself, it would be my opinion to try and answer your questions that it looks like that it's afforded to the eligible precinct committee persons. But I do not know your precedents of if this rule has been used in the past, so I would defer to others who may know.
I appreciate that. Ms. Bowerly, you had a second point of information on this question. I'm going to rule on the point of order for Mr. Flaherty to say that I, too, acknowledge the parliamentarian and Ms. Bowerly's view that the Clause 2 is what makes the subsequent dependent, that it's eligible precinct committee persons that would be speaking in a given order. But I appreciate the attention to detail, Matt. Thanks. So having said that, there are no speakers. We've moved past that. I just want to make sure. Okay. All right. Okay, now we're moving on to Rule 7, which is voting. Okay. We will now ask the caucus members to vote by secret ballot. The caucus will divide. After the 8 votes have been cast, the tellers will retire to tabulate the results. Please write the name of your candidate of choice on the paper at the ballot box, which can be found to my right. Caucus will divide. Please vote. We don't have a procedure for that. I mean, let me actually ask the caucus before that. Would you prefer us to call you up one by one or line up? Does anyone care? Would you prefer us to call you up one by one, Eros, or do you want to stand in line? All right. It sounds like call them up one by one, Ashley. Thanks.
Actually agree with that assessment, I think. Okay, I'm going to, this.
Sure.
When we vote, do we vote by people's full name, their last name, their first name? I don't want to have a bad situation here, so.
The rules are mute. I would indicate your preference by writing the name of the candidate. I think we can ascertain between the 3 last names or full names. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to start in order from this way this time. So Courtney Daly. I'll call the next person up once the person in front of you has cast their vote and sits back down.
Avert your eyes, John. That would be appropriate.
Ed Robertson.
If I could ask, in deference to First Amendment rights, if we could perhaps be a little mindful of the photography. But it is a public room, Matt. At the same time, and I appreciate the comment.
Patricia Williams. Sarah Bowerly. Matt Flaherty. Manuel Diaz-Campos. Jennifer Crossley. Iris Kiesling.
Yes. So, Madam Secretary Pirani, all the caucus members have voted at this point?
That is correct.
All right, with the caucus having voted, I'll ask the tellers to retire with the ballot box to tabulate the results. The tellers will then present the results to the secretary for reportage by the chair. Thank you. Members of the caucus, we need to post a recess, and I need the candidates to convene to the chambers with Mr. Kochivar. Ms. Stevens, Ms. Daly, Mr. Moore. Members of the caucus and public, I'd like to state that and after the first round of voting, we have a ballot that is illegible and the tellers can't determine who voted. So to Sarah, Ms. Bowerly, your comment about the nature of the vote, we actually tripped over your observation. So it is before the caucus under Robert's rules. There are two options before you that we need to decide how to proceed. The first option is that under Robert's rules, and the parliamentarian will cite for me, that the members of the caucus can review this ballot and try to determine its validity. The second option is to reballot using a ballot that has names printed out where you just check a name next to it. In either way, Clerk Bolden is printing off ballots with the names that you can check the name of the appropriate person and we move forward with it. I would entertain motions on either one of those at this time. Okay. Thank you. Is there a second for that? All right, so we have a second, and that carries. Parliamentarian, that would mean that we would be destroying the first round ballot, would it not? Or we have to vote? Okay, yeah, we have to vote. All those in favor of the motion to move to a ballot with printed names, please signify by saying aye. Opposed? Hearing none. Parliamentarian, does that mean that this ballot is now shredded?
Yes, you are reballoting in the first or only round. So yes, you are restarting this vote.
Yes.
All of the candidates were brought back, were they shown the ballot?
They were not. They were informed of the issue at hand, and they were not shown the ballot.
Okay, thank you for your clarification.
Okay, I'm reviewing our
Mr.
ballot.
Chairman, I will just note the ballot is right here, and all the ballots from this round is here. Since the balloting is being restarted, the tellers would be the most appropriate ones, is that they should remove these from the box, clear the box of everyone before the vote starts.
Thank you, parliamentarian. Will the tellers please proceed with Clerk Bolden to shred or remove the ballots and then bring the ballot box back out for the second round of voting? Thank you. This is fine by me. Thanks, Adam. Stand by, we'll vote again.
Do you want to show the candidates?
Yes. Yeah. Before we move to the second round of, or the first round of voting, do the candidates have observers that they would prefer to be in the room to observe the telling of the ballots? Are there any observers for any of the, there's an observer for the candidate, D. Owens, who are you observing for? Jenny Stevens, is there an observer for Ms. Daly? Mr. Weichert, is there an observer for Mr. Moore? It can, Mr. Volan. Okay. All right, so we have observers for the tellers. When the tellers retire, the three of you will join them to observe the tabulation. Okay? Secretary will call the roll for this round of voting. Please indicate your preference on the line next to the candidate of your choice. Make it clear. Please don't undervote or overvote. Thank you.
Yes.
Call the roll, please. There's a check line next to it.
Line.
Yeah.
Please vote once for one person. Courtney Daly. Ed Robertson. Patricia Williams. Sarah Bowerly. Matt Flaherty. Manuel Diaz Campos. Jennifer Crossley. And Iris Kiesling.
All right. The tellers will retire. The observers for Ms. Stevens, Mr. Moore, and Ms. Daly, please retire to clerk chambers. Mr. Volan, Mr. Weichert. We have a result in the first round of voting. Secretary will read out the result.
The votes are as tally. Courtney Daly, 2. Jason Moore, 2. Jenny Stevens, 4.
This time, the chair will exercise a reballot of the lowest 2 that are tied for the last place. The caucus will be directed to select their preference for who will move on to the next round of voting between Mr. Moore and the winner of this round. A ballot will be presented to you for your choice between Ms. Daly and Mr. Moore. Parliamentarian, do you have anything additional to add or clarify on that statement?
I do not.
Okay. Caucus, any questions about how we're proceeding? You're going to be voting between the lowest 2 vote getters, your preference to move them forward for consideration. Questions? Mr. Flaherty.
Just confirming under Rule 10 that this is allowed. The second sentence reads, in the event of 2 candidates tying for the lowest number of votes, the presiding officer may break the tie or call for another round of votes.
Which is,
I know you're doing a round of votes, confirming that a runoff, limiting the number of people we are voting for, is allowed as opposed to just another round of votes on the full ballot.
at the advice of the parliamentarian, I'm pursuing a runoff vote in lieu of my breaking of the tie. Parliamentarian, is that correct? Okay. Ms. Bowerly. Sure.
To thank you for allowing us an opportunity to do this.
Thank you, Ms. Bowerly. We will now proceed to a runoff vote between Mr. Moore and Ms. Daly. The caucus will divide. Secretary Pirani, please call the voters up for votes.
Courtney Daly. Ed Robertson. Pat Williams. Sarah Bowerly. Matt Flaherty. Manuel Diaz Campos. Jennifer Crossley. Iris Kiesling.
Good.
The votes having been cast, the tellers will retire to tabulate results. The observers for the 3 candidates, please join the tellers in the clerk's office to count the vote. Thanks. Tellers have returned a result. Secretary Prani, will you please read the results of the runoff?
Courtney Daly, 5. Jason Moore, 3.
Okay. With that, we'll move to a 3rd round of voting. I believe Clerk Brown is, Clerk Bolden, oh gosh, yeah, I know. I'll talk to Nikki B later and apologize. We will move to a 3rd round of voting once we have ballots for the caucus to use between Ms. Daly and Ms. Stevens. Please stand by. We'll now proceed to the third round of voting. Secretary Pirani, please call out the names of the caucus members to cast ballots in the third round.
Courtney Daly. I know you're all shocked at this point by the order, but. Ed Robertson, he's just like, I'm going.
Ed, wait your turn.
Patricia Williams. Sarah Bowerly. It's like a freaking chunk out of here. Did Trent bring treats? That looks like treats. Trent bring treats. Is it Girl Scout cookies? Because I'm here for that. I think Lucy's in Girl Scouts. Matt Flaherty. Manuel Diaz Campos. Jennifer Crossley. And Iris Kiesling. You're supposed to share. If you bring treats, you're supposed to share.
The final vote having been cast, the tellers and the vote watchers, please retire to Clerk Bolden's office. Thank you. Mr. Deckard, where's my cookies? I didn't actually order any. Tellers have reported back a result. Secretary Pirani, please read out the results of the balloting.
Courtney Daly, 4. Jenny Stevens, 4.
Okay. Under Rule 10 of the Party Caucus, rules as adopted. Last sentence, it is the prerogative of the presiding officer to call for additional votes as they determine appropriate prior to breaking the tie. I'm asking for another round of balloting. If we do not resolve the vote after this this balloting, I will execute my right to break the tie. As we're awaiting ballots by Clerk Bolden to be presented to the caucus, we'll prepare for another round of balloting. Ballots being prepared, the Secretary will call the roll for balloting.
Courtney Daly. Ed Robertson. Is it like a panic button or something? Patricia Williams. Is it a panic button? Is it a panic button? Okay. Oh, okay. Sarah Bowerly. Matt Flaherty. I was waiting to make sure it went in there. Manuel Diaz-Campos. Jennifer Crossley. Iris Kiesling.
Good.
Okay, the votes having been cast, the tellers will retire to clerk chambers with the observers, please. Thank you. The tellers will present the Secretary with the results. Secretary Pirani.
Courtney Daly, 4. Jenny Stevens, 4.
The caucus being unable to find a majority in the balloting, the chair will exercise his right to break a tie under Indiana Code 3-13-11-6. The chair votes Courtney Daly. There being no further business before this caucus, the chair will entertain motions to adjourn. All those in favor? Opposed? We stand adjourned. The public is welcome to witness Ms. Daly swearing in as the newest Bloomington Common Council District 5 representative. Please join me in thanking the candidates and the new member of council with a round of applause. We stand adjourned.